Good evening, Lamoille County. Thank you so much for joining us today. We know it's beautiful outside, so we really appreciate you spending this time with us to talk about politics and our legislature. Today, we're really excited to be joined by three of our county legislators, Representative Dan Noyes, Representative Avram Patt, and Representative Kate Donnelly. So we're really excited to hear from them about their accomplishments this session and what they've brought to our county and what they've brought for our state. So I'll just turn it over to let them start. So Representative Donnelly, if you want to kick it off, we'd love to hear from you.
Sure, thanks. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us this evening. Yeah, as many of you know, this is my first session that I have completed, and it was a pretty incredible experience.
Oops, you're muted.
I think there was an auto mute that just happened. I think in the grand scheme of things, I think we did a pretty incredible amount of work given the circumstances, being on Zoom, and for a first-time legislator like myself, as I've said many times before, I think so much of this work is about relationship building and connection, and so I really didn't know coming into this session what it was going to look like being virtual. But again, given all those obstacles, I think we did a really nice job collectively of coming together and doing really good work in committee. And a lot of what came to the floor were really strong committee votes, and so that always makes the work easier. I was on the Judiciary Committee this session, which was a really incredible honor. We were a really active committee. I think we passed 15 bills out of our committee or something close to that, which is quite a lot. And some really important legislation I feel really proud of. We did some good and challenging work strengthening law enforcement reform. We did some really important strengthening of consent law and hate crime legislation, and worked on expungement, which didn't cross the line, but I think that's a really complex issue that, in terms of what am I looking forward to moving forward? I think that's an area that we have a lot of work to do. And I would look forward to talking to anyone in the community about that issue, because I think it's an area that it would be great to have some community dialogue around and public support around, so we can get that moving forward. Some other legislation I feel really excited about that we moved through childcare. The childcare bill was massively huge, and as a parent of two young children, that felt really both a personal triumph and also a collective triumph. And the community schools bill is another one that I felt really excited about, that I'll just name. So I think I might pause there. I'm happy to answer any questions that folks have, but just it was a real honor to be a part of this historic session, and really proud of the work that got done. So thanks for having me, and again, happy to answer any questions folks have.
Yeah, thank you, Representative Donnelly. You said that expungement was the bill that didn't cross the finish line this session, but could you share anything if you have information about, are you all thinking about pursuing that again next year? What's the status of that?
Yeah, and this is an area that, as a first-year legislator, it was sort of interesting for me to see how this process unfolded. So expungement legislation, just for folks, who may or may not know, what we're talking about when we're talking about expungements is you have people who have criminal records where a certain amount of time has lapsed since they completed serving whatever the orders were for their crime. So a certain period of time has lapsed, 5, 8, 10 years, without any further interaction with the judicial system. And there's a movement to try to make it, for certain crimes, much easier for folks to have their records expunged. And what they're finding is that, people who have a criminal record, even though they may have gone, decades without any additional crimes, if they have that on their record, it's having profound impact on their ability to work, on their ability to get jobs, on their ability to get housing. Where the research is telling us that essentially, for really any crime, even the most severe crimes, after about 5 years, if a person hasn't reoffended, their risk of reoffending is about the same as just the average population of people. And so what our current system is essentially set up with is sort of providing people with a scarlet letter, if you will. And even though they may have rehabilitated, they're carrying this record around with them, and it's having severe impacts on a lot of people. And so there's a movement to try to expand expungements for a much larger set of crimes, and to try to make some expungements more automatic, because even if people are eligible for expungement, the process itself is actually somewhat complicated. I think Vermont tries to do a lot to make it more accessible, but it's still a complicated process. And so, so there's been a tremendous amount of research and work done on this by the Sentencing Committee, which is a committee that looks at these types of things and then sort of reports back to the legislature. They had done a lot of work on it. As a result of their work, we had a bill in front of us that would have broadly expanded expungement to a much larger subset of crimes. And just as we were sort of about to get to the finish line, it became very clear that the Scott administration was actually pretty hesitant to move forward. And so, again, for me, just as a first-time legislator, to see this sort of political workings happen at the very last minute was an interesting and sort of eye-opening experience. And it really made it clear that I think in order for us to continue to make important movement on legislation like this, which I think is really important for a variety of reasons, as I mentioned, as a jobs bill, as a housing bill, and as an equity bill, I think it's going to be important that we have public support around it. And so it's something that I'm hoping to continue to talk to folks about and educate people around, so we can build the support necessary to kind of keep moving it along.
Great, thank you. Any other questions for Representative Donnelly? All right, well, let's move on to Representative Noyes. If you'd like to share your update, we'd love to hear it.
Sure, thanks for having me. Welcome, everybody. Yeah, so Human Services Committee again for me this session. This will be my third term on the Human Services Committee, which is a great committee to serve on. It's really right up my alley. I'm very concerned about how we think about older Vermonters, as well as our healthcare, our health systems, and children and families. So we talk a lot about that on the committee. So a couple bills that we really worked on a long time in committee, and it's definitely totally different on Zoom. It's nothing like being in the building where, you have a lot more social interactions and you really can flesh out a lot of these ideas. Things move much slower on Zoom, as everybody knows. As Kate talked about, H-171, which is the child care bill, was really a lot of work in our committee this year. Really looked at the affordability and how we transform our child care financial assistance program, looking at making sure that there's a workforce and how we engage people who want to get into early childcare and make sure they have the education they need through grants and scholarships. And then we also took a look inside of DCF in terms of how their computer systems work, and what's, by putting quite a bit of money into the infrastructure and making sure that the data, which is really key to making sure that, we're doing the right thing at the right time, I guess. So, and just really studying the overall system of childcare and making sure that what we're doing is going in the right direction. So that was one of the bills we spent quite a bit of time on. I had two bills in committee that passed the House, both unanimously, but did not see action in the Senate, which is kind of a bummer. The first one was H153, which is the home and community base, really looking at how we provide services to older Vermonters who are receiving in-home care. Maybe they have a nurse come in once in a while into the home to help them, out and about. So anything outside of nursing home level of care, these agencies that provide these services and the people that work in this this line of work, we really, as a state, don't have a really super grasp on what it costs to deliver these services that we're asking home health to provide. And so over the last few years, we have passed out of my committee both in a standalone bill and tacked on to the Older Vermonters Act, which was a big bill we sent out of our committee last year that actually did pass the Senate, to look at those costs and to kind of figure out if we're adequately funding these agencies. So I was glad to see that go again this year, but again, that was stalled in the Senate. My other bill was the Office of the Child Advocate, which you've heard me talk about before. I've been working on that one for a number of years. It was great to see that again pass the House. It was in Kate's committee. It went to government ops. It was all over the place. Appropriations, really took the roundabout route through the House to finally get to the finished product, which I think was a really good bill. Really trying to think about how youth in state custody transition to adulthood and what does that look like, and how do we make sure that they have the services they need and the supports to be able to be successful, having been through maybe moving, living in a foster care situation or whatever. And we were really concerned about how, what does the oversight look like? How do we have somebody who can really look into what services they're getting and how they're being cared for. You can probably hear my dog in the background. He totally wants to go outside for some reason. And it's just me. So anyways, the other bills that came out of committee was a joint resolution related to racism as a public health emergency, a joint resolution. And we really spent a lot of time thinking about how people in Vermont have access to care, health care. And this was, I think a good resolution to pass. It really asked the Department of Health to look at race when deciding on decisions around making sure around healthcare and access to care. We saw that, the impact of COVID on different communities was totally different, and how we wanted that to be brought up and really looked at closely by the health department. So that was one we passed out of committee. And then another bill, which was a Senate bill, S20, was looking at PFOA. This is like super poison. It's not good stuff. And if it gets into the water, it's almost impossible to get out of the water, whether it be in surface waters or underground. It's not good stuff. And what's happening is we use it quite liberally in manufacturing in this country. Teflon pans, your nice North Face raincoat, Scotch Guard. And what happens is that essentially winds up in the landfill. Water percolates through a landfill, turns into leachate, and winds up spread on our fields or wherever through a wastewater treatment facility. It's also in our firefighting foam at the airport, through the National Guard. And so we really looked at, another one it's in that you wouldn't even think, it's in packaging for food, because the grease doesn't go through the food packaging. So, we really talked about making sure that this product is not used. And the industry's really trying to move away from it anyways, and trying to figure out other ways they can make sure that the products they're providing, it's used in paint cans and we heard from all kinds of different industries. So it's that was one of the bills we spent quite a bit of time on, and that passed this session as well. Let me take a look at my list. I don't know if I forgot anything, but glad to answer any questions. And thanks for your support this session. It was definitely interesting serving over Zoom. I can't wait to get back in the building for sure. And we go back on Zoom 26th for veto override. And then there's rumor we're going back in October as well, which will also be on Zoom. So let's leave it at that. Thanks.
Yeah, well, thank you for your service, Representative Noyes. I always have trouble distinguishing between PFOAs and PFAS, and
awesome.
So I appreciate the super poison is just easier to remember.
Yeah, not good. We don't want it. If we can use other products to get the same outcome, our planet's going to be better off for it. And so it's in the best interest of us to just get rid of this stuff.
Great. Well, any other questions? All right, thank you, Representative Noyes.
Thanks.
We'll turn to our last representative here, Representative Patt. We'd love to hear from you.
Hi there. Hello there, everybody. A couple of things first before I get into things that I worked on. I will, shortly after the legislative part of this meeting is over, I will be signing off because just prior to this, I spent 2 hours in a non-legislative Zoom meeting, and I'm Zoomed for the day. And the other thing I wanted to add to what Kate Donnelly and Dan Noyes said, which is about bills that didn't make it. Because remember, we're in a 2-year biennium, and if a bill passed the House or vice versa, a bill passed the Senate and went to the other body, and it didn't pass because we ran out of time. Issues came up that didn't get resolved, but it didn't get voted down. It's still alive. It's still possible for bills to pass. It's a 2-year session. Those bills will still be on the wall, in the committee that it was in at the point that we adjourned for this session. That doesn't mean they will pass, but I'm just saying it's still possible. I'm on the House Energy and Technology Committee, deals with energy and climate change, obviously, and in the technology part, we deal with all of the state's information systems, as well as telecommunications and broadband. And I'm going to talk about just two major bills that our committee has worked on. One that passed this year and one that passed last year in the previous biennium, but which a huge amount of work was done this year as a result of that. So first, the bill that passed this year, H360, is the very large and comprehensive broadband bill that people may have been following. It's of enormous importance across the entire state, and people understand why it's that important, and certainly people in the rural parts of the state, like most of Lamoille County and the towns in Washington County that are in my district as well. It's a comprehensive bill. Attached to it separately in the appropriations bill was $150 million, which we were very pleased with. There was some back and forth between the House and Senate about that, but we got our number. And it's important to note that in this and previous legislation on broadband, this is money primarily, and we put a great deal of emphasis on the I think there are now 10 or 11 communication union districts covering the state of Vermont, including Lamoille County. And they are in various stages of development, depending on when they actually were formed. There is one that's actually providing service to thousands of people. That's EC Fiber, that covers parts of Orange and Windsor County. Next in line is probably Central Vermont Fiber, which was formed a few years ago and is really getting ready to run fiber, and at least in some communities. And then there are other towns that are still in the development stage, but it's important when we're talking about the money to note that in addition to anything that gets appropriated essentially as grant funds to help communication union districts and these that are working together with a communication union district on a comprehensive universal service plan. Once a communication union is up and running, like EC Fiber has been, it can ball because it has a revenue stream. And there are lenders that will lend them money at pretty good rates, and it becomes a going business enterprise. So the push is to get communication union districts to that point where they're viable entities with revenue coming in. I would urge everyone listening to, if you're not already, to go online, look up your communication union district, get in touch with the board member from your town. You'll find that on the website, and tell them of your interest, especially if you are still dealing with consolidated DSL, as I am. So that was an incredibly important bill that will have long run implications. The goal and the requirement in order to use the funding that we passed this year is to get speeds of what's called 100/100 symmetrical, 100 megabits, instead of if you're using consolidated DSL, you're lucky if you get 5 or 6 download and 2 or 3 upload. You're lucky. And the goal, and with fiber, you get 100 symmetrical, 100 download, 100 upload. And it's important that we not build and spend a huge amount of money on infrastructure that will be out of date in a few years, because that's where we're going in terms of the demand for broadband, is at those kinds of speeds, and it won't be adequate what some of us are getting by with. I'd be happy to answer questions about that, but I want to mention the big bill that our committee put out, although the membership was a little bit different last year, and that was the Global Warming Solutions Act, because that set up a structure around a climate council. There was some resistance originally from the administration about certain aspects of that, and I've been very pleased that the council and it's which is run under the auspices of the Agency of Administration and the Secretary of Administration, and has secretaries and commissioners from other departments on it, as well as a very broad group of parties that are stakeholders in one way or another. They are active. They are doing everything we hoped they would do when we were talking about this in committee and getting testimony from them. And I do expect that they will be producing both regulations that the state agencies can implement, because they have the authority to do that, to go through the public rulemaking process, as well as making recommendations to the legislature if there needs to be additional statute funding, obviously. Then those are things that will, regardless of what the council recommends, that's still going to be a legislative issue. So those are the two things. And I really did want to mention the Global Warming Solutions Act, because it is so important, and because an awful lot of good work was done last year, and an awful lot of good work is being done now on implementing it. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Patt. That's super helpful, and two important issues that you mentioned there: global warming and broadband. We really appreciate your work on that. Any questions?
I did want to also mention, I think people know that on my committee, Lamoille County is very well represented. We have, out of 9 people, 3 are from Lamoille County, including Representative Lucy Rogers and also Heidi Sherman from South.
Great. Excellent. Well, thanks for sharing, everybody. We really appreciate this. We're just so grateful to have such a successful legislative session and to know that our county legislators are leading the way on really important issues. So we're very grateful. So we're now going to turn to the non-public portion of our meeting. So we're really grateful to everyone who tuned in. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next month for our July meeting. Thank you so much.
And I'm going to sign off. Bye.
Thank you.